Hello everybody, it's Let's Talk Sports with Timothy McKain, and today we're going to be talking about Duke versus UNC tonight at 9 o'clock at ESPN. And then the second thing we're going to be talking about is UNCG making the tournament for the third time in program history. Go Spartans. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is Duke versus UNC tonight. So the way that I see it is that Duke is going to beat Carolina today. And I think the score is going to be somewhere around 88 to 85. Really close game, high-paced, fast-paced, moving game. But the way that Carolina can beat Duke, they have to be together as one. They got to be a unit. Because if you look at Duke, I mean, they've got arguably the best player on the court and arguably the best front court in the nation. I mean, you've got guys like Wendell Carter Jr. and Marvin Bagley, who respectively probably put up 38 points per game combined. I mean, when you look at it, Marvin Bagley has 21.2 points per game, and he's got 11.4 rebounds. Then you have a stud in Wendell Carter, who's averaging 13.8 points a game, which isn't a whole lot. But if you look at the domination from the front court, you would see that they're the best front court in the nation, as well as he averages he averages 10 rebounds a game himself, or 9.7. So he's an incredible force on the front court. And then when you look at Grayson Allen and Gary Trent Jr., they're both exceptional players. So all around, Duke has the better players. Usually the team with the better coach and the better players wins the game. But Roy Williams is the type to motivate and encourage a family. And that's what he was saying in the press conference. He said this in an interview. He was speaking of his team. He said, "We've always felt that we're not just one guy, not just two guys," Williams said. The way we've always tried to coach is to have kids who will buy in and be a part of the family. Buy in to be a part of a team and know when one guy is down, somebody has to pick them up. Last night, that was Theo Pinson, who shot 9 of 12 from the field to score 25 points, a career high for him, when stud players like Joel Berry and Luke May respectively only scored 13 points. Luke May was 1 of 15 from the field, scoring 2 points, and Joel Berry was 4 of 14 shooting from the field and only had 11 points. So poor effort from them, but Theo Pinson picked up the slack pretty well, actually. So the way for Carolina to win and beat Duke is to have all the players play together as a unit. Because if you look at Carolina, what makes them great is that they have a balanced offensive attack. Joel Berry, 17 points per game. Luke May, 17 points per game. Cameron Johnson, 13 points a game. Kenny Williams, 11. Theo Pinson, 10. Theo Pinson also kind of like a Draymond Green type. He's a hustle player. So he averages 6.4 rebounds, and he actually leads the starters in assists with 4.7 assists a game. And I would say that Theo Pinson is definitely a huge piece because he's an all-around type player. He's not the best offensive scorer, but he's a great defensive player, and he's a good hustle player, and he'll give you assists. And then I like Joel Berry, even though he's had issues. You know, he broke his hand playing video games, but he's still a great player. The problem with Duke is you just have to, when you look at Duke, you see possibly 3 players getting drafted in the top 15. And you look at that and you're like, well, can anybody compete against them? Well, they have been prone to show weakness because even with all that great talent, they can be beat because sometimes they can become too dependent on their stars. Whereas Carolina, it's not just 1 or 2 guys. Everyone on the floor can consistently cover and play basketball. So I think that's the way that's the only way Carolina wins this game tonight is if they as a unit come together and score at the same pace they've always scored. Everybody needs to contribute. It cannot just be one guy, and that will be Duke's flaw. One guy has to pull over and score 30 points. They're not going to win. Marvin Bagley, even if he scores 35 points, but if everybody on their opposing team scores double figures, they're going to lose because it has to be more than one guy. So that's the key to Carolina's success. The second thing I want to talk about UNCG making the tournament for the third time in this program history. Since Wes Miller has taken over, UNCG basketball has changed its culture and identity to a good team because they got solid players. They got guys like Francis Alonso, Demetrius Troy, Jordy Kuiper. I mean, they even got freshmen like Isaiah Miller and, of course, Marvin Smith, who's an all-around type player. He's a defensive-minded guy who can shoot threes, spot up and shoot threes, an incredible three-point shooter. And then you got James Dickey, who had 71 blocks this year. He had 8.9 points per game and was the SoCon Defensive Player of the Year. And so you got guys. It's not like Carolina, but similar because you got a group of guys who it doesn't have to be just one scorer. Now Francis Alonso is their leading scorer with 15.6 points per game, but there have been games where he hasn't had to have scored so many points. Like I think even the buzzer beater game when they beat Wofford, when he scored a three with 19 seconds left in the game to win the game, he still was struggling in that game. And then the game when they played against ETSU, he had a good game, but it was guys like Jordy Kuiper who stood up. So it's kind of like that Carolina feel to it because you have Wes Miller who was actually brought up in the tutelage of Roy Williams. And I think this is also interesting to note. I believe that Wes Miller will be a candidate for Carolina's coaching job because Roy Williams is getting up in age. And when you look at the prospects of who can coach, Wes Miller might be the guy who can keep that Carolina weight, that can keep that Carolina success. So you heard it here first. Wes Miller might become the next UNC coach, depending on his success at UNCG. And I predict success for the next few years to come. Thank you. This is Timothy McKain. Let's talk sports. Have a great day.